Best of r/entitled parents episode 109. Subscribe for edit videos daily. First off, for the last post I made on here about my mother, thank you guys for the kind words. I really do appreciate it. But now, I wanted to share a story about the other side of the coin, since people seem to think my dad was a sin. He wasn't, just the lesser of two evils. Anyway, here it goes. So I got married last May, and I couldn't be happier with my husband. He's wonderful. A week before I was going to get married, I told my dad. He knew I was engaged and he laughed at me. He hated my husband because he saw my husband as trailer trash. My husband grew up in a trailer, yes, but the park was more like a well-maintained neighborhood and was clean, had a hoa, and kind neighbors. It was a regular subdivision that just happens to be made of mobile homes. Now my dad saying that pissed me off for two reasons. 1. My husband is not trailer trash. He was raised well-mannered, polite, kind, and chivalrous. Just because he didn't live in a big house didn't mean he was beneath me. 2. My dad grew up in a trailer. Yay. My dad is kind of a hypocrite. He grew up poorer than poor in a trailer that was falling apart around him and he became successful. So him judging my husband pissed me off. So when I told my dad I was getting married, he promptly kicked me out of the house. I was 18 but hadn't graduated high school yet. I had nothing for days until he put all my stuff on the curb, changed the locks, and watched me grab my shit and load it into my husband's truck. I had been told I wasn't allowed back and my stepmom said even if invited, she wouldn't want to go. So considering that my dad and stepmom normally have the same thought process, I just said fuck it and didn't invite them. They didn't approve of my marriage, so I wasn't going to include them. I got married the day after I graduated high school and started my new life. I interacted with my dad briefly that July to get the title to my car. I finally paid it off, and then didn't interact with him again. Until recently. I still have my father in my phone in case of emergency. I meant to text a friend and accidentally texted my dad, opening a line of communication I wasn't quite ready to have. I sucked it up though and texted back and forth with my dad. I checked on him, see how his therapy was doing. He broke his neck. Can't say why or how cause I'm not allowed, and he said he was doing okay. We then began to talk about how we left our relationship off and I apologized for cutting him out of my life. But that led into my dad getting frustrated for me not inviting him to my wedding. I told him that I figured he didn't want to go because of everything he said and my stepmom said. I admitted that I probably messed up not inviting him regardless, but he was still frustrated. My dad then proceeded to tell me that I had owed him an invitation, that he had spent so much money trying to get me in his custody, that the least I could have done was invite him to my damn wedding. This kinda irritated me. But I just left the conversation at that. I know it isn't a huffy-puffy entitlement story, but it was something I wanted to share with you guys. TLDR. Dad kicked me out for getting married and lost contact. Gets mad almost a year later for not getting invited to wedding. Thank you. Next. First time posting to this subreddit, but this happened recently so I figured I'd share it with you all. Let me set the stage. This was a couple weeks ago when me and my boyfriend, who is Chinese, important later, were out at a public park enjoying a nice weekend date afternoon. It was relatively warm and the sun was shining so we figured we'd just walk a few laps and enjoy the weather. We saw an ice cream cart, got some, he paid, what a gentleman, and sat down on the nearby bench and began eating it. I was enjoying it when I saw some lady with the angriest scowl walk running towards us. Cast, crazy lady equals CL. Boyfriend equals BF. Me equals me. CL, where is your face mask? Looking at my BF. Both of us. Wah. CL, you heard me. Are you trying to get us all infected? Me, what are you talking about? He didn't do anything wrong. CL, yes he is. He's going to infect my entire family with the virus. I assume she was talking about the coronavirus as she was staring daggers into my BF. She pointed to her family who's standing quite a ways back. The father had his head in his hands and the boy, looked about maybe 5 or 6, was sitting on the ground playing with the grass. BF, lady, I am not sick. Just because I'm Chinese doesn't mean I'm infected with the plague. Now, we are trying to enjoy our day together, so can you just go the away? CL, you are. She then grabbed my BF's forehead. Me and my BF just stared at her in disbelief. As the seconds dragged by, she let go, dug into her oversized purse and pulled out some hand sanitizer. She then poured copious amount of it onto her hands like she's trying to burn them off. LOL. CL, he's warm. I snapped out of it and I stand up so suddenly, she backs bit a bit. Me, don't you ever touch my BF again you. I turned to him. Let's get out of here before I do something I regret. This lady just wants you to be sick. My BF stands up and smirked at me. He then took a deep breath and began the loudest and most exaggerated coughing fit I've ever seen. She instantly turned around, ran to her family and got out of there like a bat out of hell. We start laughing. Me, that was so mean. BF, hey, if she wanted me to be sick that badly. Luckily, we managed to salvage the rest of our date and we had no further problems from anyone else. Some people. Thank you. Next. For some background, I'm a 24M stationed in New York. I'm an FA officer, but I'm pretty much locked in garrison because of multiple injuries that I'm getting treatment for, meaning since I live on post, I pretty much only go to work lately, do physical therapy, and watch a lot of Caleb, Griffey, and Slash. About 90% of the workforce for my unit is out in the field right now, so things are irregularly quiet. Since there's basically no one here and not much for me to do, I started getting some personal stuff taken care of while I try to expedite my treatment so I can actually do my job. Today I had an appointment at the local Goodyear to get some oil in my car, and this is where I encountered the entitled mom. Me EM, entitled depender as, EM's daughter. Adorable spawn GW, Goodyear worker. I came in for my appointment and pretty much took 5 minutes to get them my keys and get the car into the shop for them to work on. They told me it would be a while, and I said I didn't mind since there wasn't really anyone to drive me back home and I would just chill there and write or play games on my phone. The only other people there at the time were EM and Az. Since they'd been there before me, I sat in the corner, giving them the main area of the waiting room as well as the TV since I wasn't really planning on using it. Az was watching The Sponge, then some show about talking dogs, and just being a little kid, couldn't have been older than 3-4. Whenever she wasn't watching the TV or playing with the coffee stuff on the table nearby, she was staring at me, as kids do. So naturally, I did the mature thing and made goofy faces back at the kid. EM saw, but didn't seem to mind and actually looked somewhat grateful for as distraction. Fast forward about 40 minutes to EM's car getting finished. This is where the entitlement bullet trained its way in. While EM was getting ready to settle the payment, Az kept running over to the coffee table, causing EM to yell at her during her conversation with GW. GW was pretty calm and super patient about the whole thing. He put the bill on the counter and started to talk about the time and work they put into the car, and even how they took off almost 40% of the total costs because they were mostly hindered by themselves and not the car, but they still did great work. I got called up when GW put the papers down so they could talk to me about my oil change and miles and blah blah blah. EM starts freaking out about the bill for the car and starts yelling at GW about how they were a bunch of scammers and her car was fine before she brought it there and she only brought it in to do routine maintenance. I got my bill back. It was $80 for the oil change. As I started to pay, she then turns to me. EM, hey, I keep talking to GW about the car and the weather. There's still some ice and snow on the ground but it's raining at the time. EM, hey, you. Doc King. She read my tape. Me, yeah, hey, what's up? EM, are they scamming you too? How much are they making you pay? Me, like $80. Same I normally pay for my oil change. EM, well if it's not that big a deal for you, then you can pay for my car too. I work hard being a military mom, and it's hard for me and my daughter to have fun and buy food and now I'm being scammed out of my hard-earned money to pay for problems with my car that I don't have. Me, again, being mature. Well if they're problems with your car that you don't have, then I guess they're not my problem. EM looks a little confused and then angry. EM to GW, he'll be paying for my bill too. You should all be lucky he's paying for it or else I'd have to get my husband to come down here and get you all fired. I'm confused as fuck at this point. Me, Hold on, I'm not paying for your car. EM, yes you are. It's the least you can do. I let you hang out with us while you waited. You owe me. She's jabbing her finger into my chest while she's talking. If you don't pay, I'll call the MPs, military police, and get you arrested for touching my daughter. GW looks at me and just shakes his head, because we both know I hadn't done anything like that. Me, you can call the MPs if you want. I got nothing to hide. Liz is still doing kid things, grabbing creamers off the coffee table. EM starts huffing and fuming before grabbing her bill. I'm not paying for this. This is robbery. Now that she picked up the bill, I could see that she only owed $60 and I was trying to find out what the hell she was so mad about. EM, I'm not paying this. She walks to the door and Oz follows her, still carrying some coffee creamers. GW, good luck then, since we still have your car. He held up her keys. EM stomped back over to the counter and shouldered past me before rifling through her purse to pay them. After payment, EM snatches her keys and walks out the door while carrying us on her shoulder. Az waves as they leave and I wave back. EM gets out of the first door, and before she gets outside, GW shrugs and says I hope she didn't forget about the ice out there. EM steps outside and immediately falls on her ass. Fortunately, Az landed on top of her and didn't seem to get hurt, but she did spill all the creamers on EM. EM gets up and runs to her car before peeling out. GW bursts out laughing before telling me that she's done the same thing to two of his other workers, claiming that she doesn't earn enough to get by and trying to get money off or get free services, and threatening to get her husband to come in when it doesn't work. GW tells me her husband is a specialist, and even if he was ranked high enough, they can't really do anything since the place is civilian run anyway. I picked up my car and drove past EM on my way home. Thank you. Next. This post is about my wonderful mother. Mom. Mimi. Dad. Alright, so I'm 16. Started my first job not too long ago and I made a few friends. Now one of these friends, Mason, thought it'd be funny to flick his deck of name cards in my ear. The place I work at gives us name cards to show who bagged your groceries and such. He didn't know I was afraid of loud noises, so it's not his fault. I ended up having an anxiety attack that led to me going home early. Now it gets to the entitled part. My mom comes screeching into the parking lot. She drives me to and from work since I don't have my license yet, saying come on, I have dinner in the oven. I get in and this follows. Alright, what happened now? Me and Tez, I had an anxiety attack from a loud noise that was right next to my ear and it sounded like a loud bang and I thought someone was gonna hurt me. Jesus Christ. My name, what the hell's wrong with you? You're 16, you shouldn't be afraid of a loud noise. Is something wrong with you? Did I fuck up somewhere down the line? I don't even know what's wrong with me. I'm trying to figure it out. Maybe I should put you in a hospital. I didn't sign up for this shit. At this point I was begging her not to send me away and that I'll try and do better. Well, there's clearly something wrong with you. You're not a veteran, you shouldn't be acting like this. You probably just wanted an excuse to get out of work early or something. Me, do you not see me right now? I cried off my mascara. Mom, you think I did this to get out of work 1 hour early? Well, I don't know what the fuck to do with you. You've always been different. My name, you're clearly fucked up in the head. They're gonna fire you now because you're a fucking problem at work. We get home, my dad wants to talk to me now. Diura, last name, you're not weak, you push through that shit. Anxiety isn't real, you just think it is because that's what the internet tells you. Now tomorrow you're going to apologize to your supervisor for being a problem and showing weakness. So that's what I did and I am now sitting in my bathroom crying because I'm clearly a burden on my parents and work. Thank you. Next. To be honest, this happened quite some time ago. I just joined Reddit and upon reading the EP stories I thought maybe my story is one. PLS, tell me if this is an EP story. I was maybe around 14-15 years old when my mother asked me to go with my brother, 7-8 years old, to his schoolmate's birthday party held at the boys' home. Upon entering, my brother was asked by the birthday boy's sister to participate in a game. Basically, you have to guess how many gumballs are in this big see-through container just by looking at it. If you're correct, the prize is you get to take this entire container of gumballs home. So my brother gave a random number. Honestly, I told him that winning that prize is quite a long shot. Surprise surprise, my brother guessed it right. We were both shocked. Everyone was clapping. I told him to go up front to claim his prize given by the day boy himself. They even took photos and all that. The remainder of the party he kept saying how excited he was to show this to our siblings to count the gumballs if it's actually the right number and how lucky he was. I even told him to share. I was extremely happy for him. Party ended. We were about to leave and saying our goodbyes and thank you out by the door when EM basically said that her son wants the gumballs back. I was shocked, couldn't speak. I think it showed in my face because the EM quickly said how it's her son's birthday anyway, so technically all the prizes were his, and because all the prizes are from them, they bought it, they own it and all that shit. She snatched the gumballs from my brother and quickly walked away. Then the sister who made us guess the number gave us this, obviously from the day boys, maybe in wanted old toys. I told her it's okay, didn't take the toys, and told my brother let's go. It pissed me off that I couldn't defend my brother. I just stood there and did nothing. On the way home he kept asking why they took prize back. He didn't understand. I honestly couldn't control myself and told him what they did was wrong and they are a bunch of assholes. Not the exact wording. I even told him to not speak to that boy again. Maybe this was over the top, but my talkative brother was quiet, so I know it really bothered him. Before going home I have little money with me, so I bought him cheap candies to make up for it. I just gotten over the bullshit when my brother came home from school few days later and showed me that the day boy gave the picture of him handing the prize to my brother as a souvenir. I threw it away. I put this in EP because I think the EM could have explained it to her son that he cannot have the prize back. He was the same age as my brother, so I think being that young EM could explain to him what's right and wrong. Do you think this is an EP moment? Maybe EK? Not really sure. When I told the story to the family before, my aunt said well it's his day. So I got really confused. Did I overreact? Was the EM and aunt right? I just felt really bad for my brother. Thank you. Next. I don't really think this belongs here, but this is the only subreddit that I know of. Both my sister and I are graduating. She's in 6th grade and I am in 10th. But for me it's more like moving up, but still important. And my school sent a letter for me to show to my parents/s because I need a form 137 grade record from my previous school, but we still have a pretty big balance so we can't get it. I left the letters on her bed but she didn't even read it. She just threw it back at my floor. So I guess I'm not moving up. Thank you. Next. Background. My grandmother on my mother's side has 2 siblings. A brother and a twin sister. EA. My grandfather passed away in July 2017, and my grandmother passed 3 months later. I mostly have what my mother had to deal with, not sure about my uncle. When my grandfather passed, EA came and stayed in their house to help sort through paperwork, due to how much of a hoarding problem my grandma had. So when my grandma passed, she told my mother she would stay another couple weeks to help her and my uncle with the preparations, especially since they were still trying to grieve over my grandfather. We thought this was very kind and helpful of her, until the funeral came closer. Where I'm from we have boards filled with photographs of the deceased's life, along with a DVD slideshow to go alongside it. When my mother called my aunt to ask her when she and my uncle could come over to make them, but my aunt immediately said, "Oh, I already did those. You don't have to worry about that." I didn't see my mother much at this time, due to being in my first semester of college. But I remember hearing my mother being very angry days before the funeral. When we walked into the funeral home, immediately understood why my mother was so aggravated. 4 large boards and the slideshow on screen, all decorated with photos of my grandma throughout her life. But when you looked closer you saw that 95% of the pictures were of her and EA. EA completely excluded my mother, uncle, her 7 grandkids, and even her own brother. My mother was red. She told me that she saw the boards before and told EA to change them, and add more pictures of grandma's other family and friends. Grandma's oldest friend, they've known each other since childhood, was in tears and thought she did something wrong to warrant having no mention of her anywhere. She's not entitled at all. She's the sweetest lady on earth. My mother and uncle had to bring in their own photos of them and the grandkids with grandma, and place them around the room. She also told EA to change the outfit that grandma was dressed in. Now this one may sound strange to some. Why complain about what a body in the coffin is wearing? EA wanted my grandmother to wear a wool dress that was worn at my mother's wedding, which was ironic because my parents were beginning divorce proceedings at this time, while my mother wanted literally anything else but that. My mother is allergic to wool and would have had to come into high amounts of contacts with that dress if my mother didn't intervene. EA kept trying to get her way because she's my sister, while my mother responded with "and I'm her daughter, so that has no grounds." My mother and uncle took no crap from her at all. Apparently she was starting to act up like this when my grandfather passed. During viewings, I'm not sure if this is the technical term, they decided to have close friends and family to come back to grandma's house to eat. EA asked them if we could go out to a restaurant instead. My mom humored her and asked her to elaborate. EA wanted all of us to go to this fancy restaurant nearby the funeral home, and for who was going to pay. EA refused to pay. Mom's immediate response was along the line was, "If you want it, you pay for it." EA instead pouted while we all ate home cooked food in grandma's house. Now for the grand finale, but first one more little. Similar to how grandma was a hoarder, her main excuse was it's an antique. This was especially said when regarding receipts. Everyone knew this, and everyone thought it was a funny memory. So my sister laid a single receipt next to grandma's coffin, which made people smile, remembering any time grandma told us it's an antique. You can't throw it away. Well, guess who didn't get it? Yep, EA. She went up to the podium after the priest said a few prayers, planning on giving some sort of speech to give her an excuse to be the center of attention. Her eyes narrowed in on the receipt and snatched it in her claws, probably throwing it in the garbage. She scolded the crowd about littering during her dear sister's funeral. She then went on for around 10-15 minutes. I wasn't paying attention, trying to console/calm down my family so EA wasn't the next person in the coffin, going on about how much she'll miss her dear sister, and how alone she feels, so alone now in their family, with her brother in the front row giving a subtle "WTF I'm still here you know" look. When she was finished, my sister stood up. I grabbed her arm and asked what she was doing. She went up to the podium, which surprised everyone because she chose last minute to speak. Her speech was short, but made everyone laugh, telling about how grandma always used to spoil the grandkids behind mom's and uncle's back. My sister made eye contact with EA when spoke about all the friends and family grandma had, and that they were all there for each other especially when times like this happen. EA went back to her home a few days later, and we promptly cut all contact with her right after. Haven't heard from her in almost 3 years.